Hey folks, welcome to Free Press Sports with Carlson Sean. Carlson, it's good to have you back from West Virginia, where you played a couple hundred rounds of golf, it sounds like, and had, what'd you have, like 50, 60 people stuffed into a...
78. Stuff, it was a lot.
Stuffed into a cottage, and everybody, you had several receiving rooms. It sounds like you had plenty of bathrooms, plenty of beverages, adult beverages, so that's good, right?
It was fantastic. I know you're a golf fan, Sean. You're not a player anymore because of your various maladies and real.
Come on, man. I'm not any good.
Golf is the perfect sport for you. It's you can overanalyze everything. You can get into your own head. There's a lot of self-hate and loathing and doubt. This is the perfect Sean Windsor sport. You need to get into it.
Oh, I don't need anything else to help me with that. I do that fine on my own. It's. I wish I could say it was maladies, but it's not. I got the shanks when I was in my late 20s and never really played since. So that was pretty much that. No, it was a good piece you wrote on your trip to West Virginia with your buddies. You had a lot of good tips in there, and yeah, that was fun to read. But I'm glad you're back because. You know what? As much as you love golf, I do enjoy watching golf from time to time. But let's face it, the lines are what matter. Although I will have to say, my two sons were telling me the other day, actually last night, whenever that was, what day we were recording, Tuesday night, they came over to watch some NBA playoff basketball, but also some NHL playoffs. We were toggling between the Timberwolves Mavericks and the Rangers Panthers. They've really gotten into hockey, and they were bemoaning the fact that the Wings weren't in it. They're of an age where they haven't really seen the Wings in the playoffs. So, and I told them, I said, you know what, Carlos loves hockey, because they were talking about Connor McDavid and they were pulling up highlights on their phone and how funny he is. And I'm like, hey, Carlos he's not an Oilers fan. But anyway, hey, the Wings are the playoff run will be great. If the Pistons ever got back, that'd be great. Tigers with the World Series. By the way, we'll talk about Scott Harris's basically saying, hey, we're never going to be good again to the MLB network.
Slow your roll.
Yeah, we'll do that here in a bit. But let's get on to the team that just, man, here we are. It's late May, and they still dominate every day. You wrote about Aaron Glenn. I wrote about Jameson Williams last week. And then again, Jack Campbell. I'm sure you got more live stuff, but many OTAs are going on. We have another gathering with them at Allen Park later this week. Actually, Thursday, I want to say Dave Campbell will talk again. So it just keeps on rolling, doesn't it? The NFL and these Lions.
Yeah, it's been like this for a while, Sean. I'm not sure. Maybe you were too busy at Summer League or covering Pistons, I don't know what, prospects or whatever. But yeah, it's been going on for a while. The Lions, the NFL are a big deal in, American sports. So yeah, obviously the stakes are raised. The interest is raised because, Super Bowl hope and hype and all this stuff. It's interesting because this is the first season in a really long time, longer than I can remember. I haven't been around. I've covered the team since 2006, and there's never been a season that's begun this way where the hope, it was based on reality, not just, people drinking the blue Kool-Aid, but on what they did the previous season. And they were so close to getting to the Super Bowl, and everybody expects them to get darn close to that level again, and that changes things, and it definitely helped that the draft was here. But I'll be curious to see how much better attended training camp is, how things play out as the season continues. I don't know. I mean, we have some metrics we can look at in readership for our stories or columns or articles and all that. I don't know that it's crazy higher than it's been before, but maybe this is still early in the season. Maybe not everybody's a diehard, Honolulu Blue fan. Maybe they're just waiting for more action to happen. Maybe that happens more in training camp. Because right now it's, they're just in shorts and helmets. They're just pajamas really running around, non-contact, no tackling. So it's early, very, very early, but should be people want to know. People want to read what Sean Windsor thinks about the Lions this year.
I don't know about me particularly, but they do. I first noticed it about a year ago with starting with rookie minicamp. And you were talking about how the hope this year, the anticipation this year, well, there was a lot of anticipation last year. It was based a little bit more on hope than this year. But last year was based a little bit in reality too because of the finish they had, that 82 finish. And then look,
Right, but it was half a season, right?
But it was this. There was the right half of the season. It was the second half. If it had been the first half, it probably would have been very different. But they
Recency bias.
they finished on such a high note, and were just outside the playoffs, and that just felt different. So there's a lot of anticipation. And I remember feeling it last year. I'll tell the listeners an example here, not to get too much inside baseball, but again, the Lions have another OTA practice, and the Campbell's going to talk. I think Ben Johnson, your guy's going to talk. Various players will talk after the practice. And I was talking to our editor, the great Kirkland Crawford, and our colleague, our other columnist here, Jeff Seidel, he's been off for a bit, is back. And we were talking about who should go Thursday and cover. Again, not to get too insidery here, but he's like, everybody. Like this sounds like the fall. What do you mean? This is what is this? The college football playoff or the NFL playoffs? Or he's like, no, everybody. We can't get enough. The numbers are there's just so much interest right now. And maybe the Tigers falling off a little bit. I don't know, but I don't think that's it. I think it's just like you say. People are legitimately thinking Super Bowl, and readers just can't seem to give it enough. And it's our job to try to offer that up. Isn't that crazy? All three of us, plus the great Dave Burkett. Who knows? We might even have a couple of stringers out there.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, it's it's a lot of this. Just sometimes this boils down to schedules, right? Who's on vacation? Who's whatever. You can't be at everything all the time, but. I remember when they drafted Ndamukong Suh, on rookie camp that year was pretty well attended.
It was because of him.
I don't know if you guys were calling this yet, but that's, it just depends on, part of it is the draft year, who's picked high. The Aiden Hutchinson thing drew a lot of interest for rookie camp that year. I think with the NFL, the way it's been, even the Lions who've not been good most of the time the last, decade or so, that yeah, it's always the promise of the future. That's the thing the NFL sells, right? Is hope. And you had a bad year, but you drafted really high, and people want to know about this player, these, the group of draftees, how it's working. Maybe there's a quarterback competition, whatever it might be. Pittsburgh, there's probably a lot of interest in the quarterback situation there. So you could there's every year you could go and cover this. Right now, I think you could write a Detroit Lions story every single day. We used to do that. But we could have a Detroit Lions column every single day. And I thank Mr. Crawford for not making us do that, because he could stand down and dictate. He's not listening.
No. But it might lead. But your point is, it might lead our site if we did that. I mean, that's just.
It would do really well.
It's just the reality.
It's the NFL. It's the NFL, and the NFL just, the 800-pound gorilla, right? And it keeps growing. Crushes everything.
And they're like, their ratings have been up the last couple of years again. And the draft attendance is, you look at the chart. I mean, maybe Detroit is responsible for some of that because it's such a great sports town, but the draft attendance has been on the rise. Pittsburgh, our former colleague Ben Schmidt, who covered the City Hall and cops for a long time for us for the Free Press, great reporter. He went back to his home at Pittsburgh. He was texting me the other day. It's like people are going crazy when they announced that Pittsburgh gets the draft. I think not next year, but the year after, 2026. And it's just that'll probably be similar to Detroit in terms of the experience.
I was for the Memorial Day weekend. I was in Erie, PA, and we had friends or relatives who live in Pittsburgh, and they were excited about it. They were asking me questions about, what's it like, and can kids go, can this and that. What are they're already getting ramped up in it. It's Pittsburgh, and I don't think they have a population that Metro Detroit already has, but they deserve it, and that fan base is nuts, and they don't have a basketball team. Sean, I don't know why. Explain it to me. But anyway,
they have one of the great basketball movies, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, for anybody out there that's 50 or older.
The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it was Gabe. What's his name? Kaplan. He played Mr. Cotter and
Mr. Cotter.
Welcome back, Cotter. Again, we're dating ourselves. I know you like to drop the pop culture references in your columns for anybody 50 and older.
60
and older, but no, it just keeps growing, and the fact that the growth is aligning with the Lions' recent success That's just made it crazy to your point that we can get out there every day. All right, so let's talk before we move on to the Tigers and Scott Harris. Let's talk a little bit about. I mean, you want to mention Jameson Williams. You wrote about Aaron Glenn. I wrote about Jack Campbell. Let's start with this. Why do you hate Aaron Glenn?
I love my man Aaron Glenn. No, I do find him fascinating. I mean, the way he, it's to me, Aaron Glenn is what you get from all the, I wouldn't say like the acme of evolution of NFL coaches, but it's almost like he's watched a lot of coaches on TV and like, this is what a coach should be like. The way he talks, the way he carries himself, I want to be strong. I want to be confident. I want to be, Teflon. I want to be, there's a shield up with him sometimes, I think, where you can't penetrate it and it's hard to get honest answers out of him. I think he prefers, and coaches do this, but I think it's changed more where coaches, coordinators and head coaches, it's almost the Belichick, not quite Belichick, but kind of that old school idea of I'm the general, I'm the whatever, and I think part of that is aligned with because he wants to be a head coach. He thinks this is the image I need to project here, but it makes him fascinating because he does push back, he challenges reporters, which is completely cool. But I don't know if he is as sincere as he can or should be with his answers, because when there are moments of questioning vulnerability or weaknesses, he just doesn't like to go down that path. And that's where, that's where I struggle with him sometimes. I want him to acknowledge deficiencies, struggles. I mean, I think that's how, and look, it at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you say to the public. It matters what you say to your players. And if that message is getting through, sometimes I think it's hard to say one thing publicly and then tell your player something else privately, because they listen to these press conferences. They know what he says. They all do. They all know what their coaches say. And maybe if he says, hey, that's for them, I just told them this, but I need this out of you. You know that we're going to, the pressure's here, that you guys need to step up. It's no more training wheels time. We got to, whatever it is. That's just where I struggle with him. But I find him interesting. I think he's a good, probably a good better position coach than maybe a coordinator. But yeah, he's fun. He's fun to cover, don't you think?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, he's got the charisma about him for sure. He carries himself like a head coach, which is part of why he keeps getting interviewed. I mean, he just does. It's funny. Ben Johnson does not, and I don't know if that's got anything to do with anything, but it's a different, Glenn strikes me as a leader. I mean, maybe more than a position coach. And I could actually see him being a head coach, but you're as good as your talent, right? I mean, that's the key. I mean, you have to develop your talent to a degree, but I just see it a little bit differently. When you were asking, you wrote about the pressure, and when he says he's always feeling pressure, I mean, it's true. I think these guys feel like they got to fight for, the NFL will fire you in a second. I feel like they feel like they got to fight for their job all the time. That you can never get comfortable. I mean, maybe Bill Belichick was comfortable, but even he got fired after he lost his talent. You look at that. Yep. I mean, that's just kind of how it goes.
Twice.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of how it goes. So I don't think he's insincere at all. He's not going to get up there and get vulnerable, but he has acknowledged the deficiencies with the defense, but he's not going to talk about it. He's not going to sit there and open himself up. I get the sense he's very private that way. Campbell opens up a little bit more, but even he watches what he says to a degree. He doesn't like to make it about him. I think that's the thing. A lot of coaches don't. They don't. They're worried that it'll make it about them, and they just don't want to do that, especially in football. I just feel like it matters more, the nature of the game, how hard it is to play, the physicality, the constant injuries. I think coaches are very aware of how they sound, and they want to acknowledge and show respect to this incredibly physical and difficult game that these guys are playing, put their bodies on the line. So I think that's part of it. I really do.
Do you think?
No, I was just going to say, you're right. In the end, the defense has got to show something. They have gotten better. And the question is, and in your column, you pointed out how they basically went from the worst in the league to over the, 3 years to low 20s. So they went from the bottom of the league to the top of the bottom third of the league, more or less. So can they
top of the third run?
Yeah,
Yes.
basically what they need to do with the talent on the offense and the way Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell run that offense and how it all meshes together, they don't need a top 10 defense to win. They need to get into they need a middle of the road defense. And if you go back and look at Super Bowl now last year Kansas City had a great defense, but if you go back and look at the Super Bowl winners and even teams in the Super Bowl, there are plenty of teams with great offenses with defenses that rank 12, 13, 14, 15. That's what they need to get to, 16. Can they make that leap? Can they go from 21 to 15, 14 and get in the middle of the pack? That's the leap that they need to take, to me, to be able to get to the Super Bowl and win it with the way their offense is built.
Yeah, I think you're right. They don't need their offense is elite, so it's unreasonable to expect two elite sides of the football.
You don't see it, do you?
Unless you don't see it, it's you can't. And but I still think that they have underachieved with the talent that they've given him, with the draft picks they haven't gone crazy in free agency, but they haven't on offense either.
What draft picks outside of Hutchinson? Middle linebackers are projects. I mean, that's like it's like quarterbacks. You just
so are defensive backs. I mean,
safety's probably more so than cornerbacks. Sometimes you'll see a cornerback come in and be good right away, but as you wrote, generally not. I mean, when's the last time?
Yeah,
it's Sauce Gardner, but that guy's a physical. I mean,
right.
Who else is like him? He's 6'3" and one of the fastest guys in the league. I mean, it's just he's a freak. He's an outlier, even in a sport with the best athletes in the country. He's an outlier.
Yeah, the line's passing him, but that's another. But anyway, yeah,
Hutchinson. I know. And I've argued. I remember arguing that night. Like, should they take this guy? Because
I would have taken Hutchinson because there's a much shorter, smaller learning curve. And nobody predicted he'd be this good this quick. I mean, all pro maybe his first year.
Yeah, no.
Rookie of the year.
I argue he's the best cornerback in the league right now, and he's 2 years.
Yeah.
He's 2 years in. So
yeah,
Terrion Arnold's not going to be that, right? And no offense. Not immediately.
Well, that's another thing with Glenn that the to me being not entirely truthful, disingenuous is just that he went on to say that we picked two defensive backs, two quarterbacks with the first two picks, and that sometimes some people think that means there's a soft spot in the defense, but no, it just worked out this way. They were just the best players. Yeah, what a coinky-dink. You have the worst unit on the team, and you commit your first two draft picks, including moving up to get these guys. You don't even go there then. Don't even say that. If you
but why go after him for saying that when Brad Holmes said the same thing draft time? I mean, it's the Dan Campbell.
Because Brad Holmes is a GM. They all say that same BS of the best player available.
Yeah, and they either meet it or they don't. And some of them meet it. Some of them want to draft for need, whatever, and some don't. I mean, they're different philosophies. And Holmes has been consistent, whatever else you think, in that messaging since he got with the Lions. So to me, Glenn's just saying the same thing. And maybe they believe that. I don't know. The idea that they took two cornerbacks makes you think that they believe. That's more an argument in their favor than yours, the fact that they took two. If they just took one and they were saying that, then yeah, they'd be full of it.
You think it's just cosmic alignment that the two best players happen to be cornerbacks that they need on their defense? That's just a coincidence.
The second one, luck.
Stroke of
the second one. I don't know if it's a stroke of luck, but the second one, yeah, they did it last year. They went and got a running back. They drafted Jack Campbell. They go, this is the guy we had rated. Like, well, you don't take middle linebackers in the first round.
I believe the Jack Campbell pick.
That's ridiculous. You don't take a middle linebacker. Now they did need help at linebacking core last year, right? Anzalone's gotten. I think he's outperformed what the expectation when they traded for him or when he signed here, right? But they definitely needed help in the linebacker core. So you could say, well, that was a position they need too. But they took a lot of heat for that.
Yeah, not like cornerback. I mean, you need help almost everywhere. But yeah, two picks.
They'd already signed. They'd already signed two cornerbacks. So that's the thing. So they didn't think that they needed the
just journeyman.
No, Carlton Davis was a lot more than a journeyman. Go look at his numbers. He's been
how many Pro Bowls has he made?
Go look at the numbers. He's been a very good quarterback. I don't think he gave up.
He's been an average quarterback in the NFL.
No, he's been above average, and he's had a couple of years where he's been well above average. His problem is health, and then it maybe not quite to the degree that the guy said Brian last year, but no, he's had some health issues. We'll see if he can stay healthy. That's the key with him. He didn't give up a touchdown on one-on-one coverage last year. This guy's good. Can he stay healthy? I mean, he's not Sauce Gardner, but he's good. And we'll see if it works out. But yeah, so to me, that's what that's all about. The Rakestraw pick, you either believe Holmes or you don't. At some point, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I know that a lot it's proprietary in the NFL more than anybody else, and they don't want to say stuff and so forth. And a lot of coaches like to use the media to get messages to players, and so yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. But I don't know. To say that Glenn is somehow stepping out, I just don't see it. I don't see it.
And I stepping out?
Yeah, stepping out. That he's stepping out and saying something different that's felt and thought organizationally. I don't see it. Ben Johnson would say the same thing, and he wouldn't rip him for that.
He's not stepping out. He's saying exactly what the message. He's just parroting what Brad Holmes says. But that's what almost every general manager says now: is best player available, because nobody wants to admit that they're drafting for need. Because then if you draft for need, then why didn't you get this guy? Why didn't you get that guy? You need this guy. If you just say, it's like if you buy your kid a toy and say, this is the best toy on the market, but I don't want that. Yeah, but it's the best toy.
It's
just propaganda.
When they took Hutchinson, was that for need? I mean, yeah, they needed a defensive lineman, but are you gonna say that was him? Because Sauce Gardner was right there too. They needed a cornerback.
Yeah. They needed both. Well, you can't take two.
But so they went with went with who they thought was the best player, and what's going to fit their locker room. That's probably the bigger thing. They're very particular about who they want to bring in. They've even got players talking about that. Now I saw a quote the other day from I wish I could remember who it was. It was a player who said, "Yeah, the guys they brought in. God, who said this? It was just last week. The couple of guys they brought in the draft, they fit us." So even the players are parroting this whole idea of, I don't want to say parroting, that sounds like the players can't think of themselves, and that's not fair, but they're all buying into this idea. Yeah, these are Lions. We're getting the Lions in here. We're going to, and it's just who they are. You can be cynical about it, and that's fine, but I think that's who they are. I don't think Glenn is dodging anything, really. He's got to get that defense into the middle of the pack, or a little better, if he wants to stick around, I would think.
Yeah, and one thing he said was about the quarterbacks, about Rakestraw and Arnold, is just that, they're going to take their lumps and all that, you expect rookie quarterbacks to do, but they're going to be ready to compete. They're going to, come back and be prepared to compete. And I think that's what the players are getting at, is that, we don't have jerks on the team. We don't have selfish guys. Maybe not everybody's like the greatest player, but they're committed, and they love football. They're committed to football. They want to get better. And that's important, because sometimes you do make compromises of somebody who's not a team player, somebody who's more about themselves. And if you don't, and that can hurt a locker room balance. It can hurt, team unity. And that's, I think, what they're talking about, what Campbell has preached, what Holmes, telling them, I think Glenn talked about this a little bit. We, talked to the personnel people and say, this is the kind of player we need, we want. And he said that, and that is important too. He said, this is my personality, is I'm aggressive and I like a smothering defense, and these guys fit my personality as a play caller, as a coach. And that's important too, because if you don't see the game the same way, it's sometimes hard to get your vision realized. Now, maybe it takes a few years for the attrition to happen and get your guys in there more. By now, it's going into year 4. That should have already happened. So that's another question. It's just, why has this defense not taken off? If you believe you've had the same general manager, the same personnel department, why has it not taken a big leap yet? That's a question for the future that I'm sure he's going to dodge. And, I'll not like it and you'll excuse it. But yeah, that's the problem.
Going to say, I mean, it's not for me to like or dislike, right? That's not up to me.
It's for me. So yeah, that's That's the thing. It's just where is the disconnect here? That's what we don't understand.
I don't think there is a disconnect. You overestimate the talent. Nobody else in that press room thinks there's a disconnect. You overestimate the talent on the defense.
I don't overestimate.
And by press room, I mean like the Lions headquarters. They don't think there's a disconnect, right? It's you overestimate the talent. Either if you're not doing that, then I'm not sure what it is. Do you think there's a disconnect?
I think Brad Holmes. I believe in Brad Holmes. I don't think you do, maybe, but I believe that he's gotten them enough good talent where they should have done more. They should have. Now, there's been some
where their secondary has been. I mean, their cornerbacks have not been good. Outside of Anzalone, their linebacking core has not been good. Except Barnes became better. Barnes has developed, right? Malafano was developed late, right? As they moved him from cornerback to safety.
Developed late.
Branch was good. Branch was good as a rookie. You know, the one area where they've had some legitimate talent, experience, and just talent is the defensive line, which is why they're the best, especially in the middle with Lynn McNeil, and why they've been so good at stopping the run. But losing Houston last year was a killer. So their pass rush was inconsistent. Hutchinson gets doubled all the time. So I just don't see the talent that you do.
Where's Levi on Wuzarike?
Nowhere. That's the point. I mean,
where is he? Is it Brad Holmes missed on the pick, or has Aaron Glenn not developed the talent? Well, it's got to be one of the two.
He came in injured, right? So that's kind of a weird deal. I haven't played much. I mean, it's been. I mean, to me, 3 years. To me, the bigger one is Pascal. I mean, Pascal looked like he was going to flash at first, and he's been inconsistent too. But he's not an edge. I mean, he's not an edge rusher. You're not going to hit on every pick. I mean, some of the guys have gotten better. Like I said, Malafon has gotten better. Barnes has gotten better. Branch was good immediately. He just kind of, they definitely hit on him. But the corners have been not good at all, and they haven't had anybody get to the quarterback outside of Hutchinson. And he was good as a rookie, but not great. He was much better last year. So, I mean, he led the league in pressures or close to it, right? Yeah, to me, the talent, they're more talented this year. We'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's time to see somebody, to see more. And you get and they haven't drafted a lot of quarterbacks. I mean, Malafano was kind of drafted as a cornerback, but they weren't sure safety cornerback. And then Branch was, but he's a nickel. So they haven't spent a lot of picks on corners. And they haven't also invested a lot in corners in the free agent market either. So, and we've talked about this before that, Holmes was a cornerback cross-checker for the Rams. So maybe he knows a little too much about the position, and he called himself a snob about the position. So he may be too demanding to draft a lot of them, and they do get hurt a lot. So it's a tough position, but they need someone to step up there, whether it's Carlton Davis or it's Arnold or somebody else. Someone needs to make a difference.
Absolutely.
On the outside for them. And, that alone could make enough of a difference. As you know, passing league, right? You help take away a deep threat, consistently, not all the time, but at least more consistently, more often than not. And that's going to help him with your boy, Jack Campbell.
He's got to step up. He does. I mean,
but that will help him too. Coverage in the back end will.
He really absolutely. He really struggled in pass coverage last year, and he talked about it the other day. He admitted it. I mean, he said, "Hey, I focused on the front and I was trying to learn where to be and right, he's a middle linebacker. The game is fast. He's trying to think about his responsibilities.
Tough position.
Yeah, he's trying to think about responsibilities instead of just reacting. Once you learn some of that, and now he's got to connect the front to the back and know where to be in coverage and know where his help is on his blind side and the back and all that rotating. And he talked about all that. He's got a lot to learn. He has the physical fundamental tools. He's big, long, rangy, and got good speed, and he's got some toughness about him. I don't know if he'll hit or not. Maybe he will, but we'll see. They think he will. Obviously, they took him in the first round, but he's got to hit, right? Hutchinson's still got another level. Bringing in DJ Reader, if he can stay healthy, and McNeil's, that'll give them as good a defensive tackle tandem as there is in the league in terms of a tandem, right? So that should get better. We'll see. The Holmes just has not hit on the same. He found Sam Laporta on defense,
It's probably Ben Johnson's pick, but
and found St. Brown. He drafted a 4th round guy, ends up being the best slot receiver, the best in his position in the league. I mean, they found a few of those. The other thing too is when Holmes took over, they already had 3 really good linemen two great linemen in Decker and Ragnow, and one all pro lineman in Ragnow. And then immediately
Pro Bowler and Jonah Jackson.
no, for sure. All three of those guys are really, really good. Ragnow's like Hall of Fame good. And then you add their first top pick to that group. That's where he went. It's like, okay, let's double down. This is the best group of the team. Let's double down. And they did. And it worked. I mean, they built a whole offense around it. So this gave Ben Johnson a nice canvas. That's for sure.
Well, let's get into Jameson Williams. I mean, you wrote about him. Do you want to take a break?
Let's take a quick break, come back. We get the rest of the summer to talk about the Tigers. And Scott Harris doesn't ever want to win. Chris Illich is never going to span. That's all we need to say, right?
Javier Baez, Tiger,
and he's never going to hit. So what else is there to say? Riley Green's the best hitter. He's going to keep hitting 220. I mean, excuse me. Sorry. I know that's not his OPS. He's going to have a 700 OPS or whatever. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlson Shaw. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlson Shaw. All right, now that we've dismissed Aaron Glenn, I think it's time we need to get into Jameson Williams and decide if he should stay.
By the way, who gets a head coaching job first, you think? Aaron Glenn or Ben Johnson? I don't know. I mean, I would assume Ben Johnson, but if their defense let's say they take a lead, they get up into like right outside the top 10, 12, 11, somewhere in there, and then the GM's going to be able to sell to the owner and a fan base. Look at this guy's defense; it's just got better the last 3 years. And listen to the way he talks. And he's got the Dan Campbell magic and all the fight and all that kind of stuff. You could see that happening if it happens with the defense. But if it doesn't happen, I don't see him getting hired. It would have to be a big leap.
Yeah, I don't see him getting hired I mean, he's jumped 10 spots, but he needs to jump 10 spots in a single season.
I think if they get to the Super Bowl and they get to like 15, 16 overall, whatever defense, yeah, that could, or scoring defense or whatever. If they make some big stride and get to the Super Bowl, his profile would be bigger. It'd be an easier sell. It would be such a hard sell right now.
Right now,
to the fan base and the media. Right, he goes.
Think about it. If they do what you just did, imagine the narrative. You know how narratives get going, and then it's going to be, look what Aaron Glenn did with one Pro Bowler, Aiden Hutchins. Right there. Look at the defense. Yeah, they're plucky, whatever. But there's not really any. I mean, maybe Brian Branch pops in a way this year, and he gets up on some of those Pro Bowl considerations, but. As not a slot nickel hybrid defender or whatever, but you know how those narratives and those storylines get, and then they create their own momentum, and it's like the first time somebody says, "Oh wow, what's Aaron Glenn doing over there? That they've gotten so much better." They're not really that talented, right? I mean, you can see,
yeah, it could work for him that way.
It totally could. It's amazing, and then all of a sudden, yeah, that's the story. It's amazing. I mean, This is what sports is fundamentally, right? It's stories. It's competition, but why do we watch, really?
It's narratives, and it's also the narratives that you prefer, and I think that's one of the problems. The difference between Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson in the interview process is Ben Johnson is Bill Belichick. Is that he's his own guy. He doesn't come off as warm and cuddly and whatever. He doesn't pander, and he's just. Whatever, maybe I don't know if you want to call it aloof or, this whatever, but he doesn't do himself favors because he's probably, borderline cocky and confident in what he does. That's what Belichick was. And owners want more of the Dan Campbell, we're all kumbaya, or we're a good team, we're going to be tough, or drown people in the fight kneecaps.
Is it kumbaya?
I think they like it.
Kumbaya, or they just not want jerks.
They don't want jerks, but they don't understand sometimes, and that's right. One of the we're going down a weird rabbit hole, but one of the things is that Ben Johnson supposedly criticized the Commanders for is that they were NBA guys, that they weren't football guys, and sometimes that plays into the whole it's an ownership group or owners, and they this is what we believe a football coach should be like, and if it doesn't fit your idea of what that's like. Sometimes you can't see, the genius behind it. It'd be hard, And that's the thing with like Bill Belichick, right? It's like you have to win at an extraordinary rate to put up with who he is and the authoritarianism and all that stuff. But it worked. So it just depends on what you're comfortable with. And there's a lot to be said about it, about the culture. Maybe he didn't answer the questions right. Maybe Aaron Glenn does answer those, like, oh, we're going to be all together, or we're going to communicate, and that could serve him well. But let's
no. It worked too because of the talent. You got to have talent. So, I mean, you just do. Speaking of talent
and develop.
Yeah, you do. I mean,
you got to get 4th round receivers and turn them into all pros.
Yeah. You no question that was a hell of a pick by Holmes. You've got, maybe you get lucky with a 6th round pick who ends up being one of the best quarterbacks that's ever played a game. That
or discarded quarterback and turn him into a Pro Bowler and give him a huge contract. So
that was
Brad Holmes too.
Yeah, well, the guy who Brad Holmes thought, hey, he was a borderline Pro Bowl level at his previous stop and then fell out of favor. So it's not like he was taking somebody that wasn't a number one overall pick. I was talking about this with somebody the other day about Goff is still in a lot of ways underrated. His processing and accuracy is about as good as it gets in the league. That's why he's good. That's why he's good. I mean, yes, the mobility, throwing a row, whatever, but he's got a couple of elite skills at quarterback. Reading, seeing, and accurate. And when he's not in his own way, right, and not having issues with coaching staffs and nobody's confident and whatever, like any other human being, if you're right, and that's what Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell have done so well with him, is kind of rebuild him up. But man, the talent was there. It's just not easy talent to see. We've talked about this before, right? That guy is accurate as anything and knows where to go with the ball. And he's elite at those two things. That's why he's good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he was the number one pick for a reason, right? It was because of those traits. It wasn't because he was running around all over the place, throwing 60-yarders on a road like Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, all right, speaking of talent, you wanted to mention Jameson Williams before we move on to another segment here.
Is there anybody who needs to take a bigger step, do you think, than Jameson Williams that's important to Lions' success
on the offense or overall?
Either side.
I mean, that's a good question. I think, and this is probably in a minority opinion, I think Jack Campbell needs to take a step. I think he's got to connect that defense. Like we just talked about, I think he's got some tools, and he needs to figure out how to fully take advantage of them. That's not a criticism. He's not missed time because of gambling, and he's not had the injury issues and all that, and he's only in his 2nd year. So he just needs to take the natural progression for them to be good. Jameson Williams needs to do it for 2 reasons, for the team and for his own career, that he wants to, he was talking to us the other day about it. He wants to be one of the best to ever play. Well, he's right. So if he wants to get there, yeah. But for the offense to be elite again, because the defensive minds around the league have spent the off season, right? Try to figure out ways to slow these guys. I mean, that's what you do.
But for personal, okay, that's the team. Forget the team thing. For a player himself, do you think Campbell or JMO need to take the bigger step? This is 3rd year for JMO, 2nd year for
Jameson Williams, for sure.
Williams. With all the hope and the hype that he came in with, and obviously he came in injured and all that, but then the whole gambling thing last year, suspension, he needs to prove a lot, right? He's got to have a clean year. He has to show a lot more progression, a lot more consistency.
Yeah. He's got to build on some of the stuff he showed late last year. He came on late. The thing about him that we forget is funny, and Dave Burkett and I argue about this. He's got his thoughts about Jameson Williams, right? And part of it's just pure fundamental technical stuff with him. Body catches, he struggles to get the ball out in front of him. He's not high pointing balls on the leap. Contested catches down the sideline, whatever, stuff like that, right? But Williams loves football. You can see that he's a willing blocker. Always is. So all those things that the Lions guys love, Holmes and Campbell love, he's got those. But does he have the route precision? He talked the other day about he didn't know where he was supposed to be last year. A lot of times, I mean, he said that, which is, I give him kudos for saying that. And then he needed to work on it. He said, hey, I was immature. I was stubborn. I need to mature. You don't hear players say that very often. I give him kudos for that. He said, I need to, basically I need to grow up.
Yeah, he does. And, he said he came in the league with childish, ideas and things. And, sometimes it takes guys a little longer to mature than others. Some guys never do it. He's at least recognizing that deficiency and needs to work on it. It's just at this point, going into your third year, that's concerning for me just because that part should have been settled. The mental part, the playbook, understanding where he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to do, where he's supposed to run, all that stuff, that should not even have been a question, which makes me wonder just how did he spend his time when he was injured his first year, his rookie year? Why did he not know the playbook as well? Why did he not know
he was stubborn, right? He said so. He was stubborn because he got away with it at Alabama, and he figured it would.
That's the number one.
He figured it would translate, and it learned he did not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, Glenn mentioned this, by the way, with Terry and Arnold, and saying, Alabama, you're playing Georgia once a year, maybe twice a year, but you're not playing 8-back state, every where you get a week off from no good receivers and you can cruise a little bit, and that's the thing that all these guys, first round draft pick for JMO, you moved up to get him. Like, how do you not tell them? And this, we've seen this so many times, that guys bank on their sheer athleticism. They just beat people in college because they're faster, bigger, stronger, whatever it is. They get to the NFL and everybody's good. Everybody's strong and big and fast and has good technique, and they're going to expose you. And that's where it's like it's going in his third year. And this is obviously a concerted effort by the Lions. Dan Campbell comes out with he's a man on a mission. He's improved more than anybody else that I've seen this offseason. And, they need him to be good. They need a viable, consistent number 2 receiver after
they do that. By the way, that was a message to Williams, right? Because he knew I've talked about Jim Leland before and how he used to do this all the time. Campbell knew when he was asked about it, and he would say that, and then he knew it would be asked to Williams, hey, what do you think of your coach saying this, right?
Absolutely. And yeah. So Williams knew it too.
Smart, right? I mean, it
was smart, but it was a little contrived because I'm sure they told JMO, look, Dan's going to talk about this. You guys, obviously they've been talking in the offseason about what they expect from him, but it's like, Dan's going to mention this to you. Probably talk to the media. He's probably going to get asked about this, JMO. So be ready for these questions.
Well, I mean, that's possible, but it's also, I mean, how this things work. Like the teams, the good teams with the good public relations staffs try to anticipate to a degree what the media want, what stories they're interested in, what they're going to talk, and then they want to make those guys available. So there's some of that going on too, and it's hard to know sometimes which is which. But Campbell clearly wanted to get that out there for Williams on Williams' behalf. And it's one.
Yeah, but the NFL is different. It's not, for the listener out there, the way it works with the NFL is you can't just get any player you want. There's not just, we don't go in the locker room after they're done. They come off the field and they already, the PR staff, picks certain players. There's an interest in some of them, clear interest or whatever, but then the other players, if they're just walking off the field, they can say yes or no, whether you stop them for an interview. And generally the stars like the JMOs and, the Goffs they have to be assigned, the podium or the microphone. So this is all very, very organized. There's nothing particularly wrong about it, but it's different than Jim Leland. Jim Leland did things on his own. He came up with ideas of like, hey, I'm saying this, and it's up to you guys if you want to go find this guy in the clubhouse and talk.
But the PR isn't always talking to the coaching staff. That's the difference. And so it is like Leland to a degree. So sometimes Campbell wants to say things to us that'll get back to his guys. That's the same. Like, I think that's the same in every league. You're talking about like C.J. Moore. They made him available last week. That was a public relations decision, a media relations decision, because he had some issues. Again, they want to get it out of the way. So that's their strategy. So there's absolutely strategizing. And part of it's just, okay, what will the media, sometimes maybe they want to get over something that's controversial, but a lot of times it's just, all right, who they want to talk to, what's going to be popular or whatever. So it's not all nefarious, right? A lot of it's just,
no, none of it's nefarious. It's just
nuts and bolts, right?
It's just that it was a calculated decision that they made. We need him to get better. Dan's going to talk about it. to the media. By the way, that question was asked by a person who works for the Detroit Lions. So, hey, Dan, and by the way, Campbell and almost very few coaches, very few of them, but Campbell especially doesn't like to single out guys. If he's been asked this question before, and it tends to be a younger reporter question of, hey, who stood out, coach? And he's going to give you the blueprint of, well, this guy's done well. Here. They usually say, I don't want to single anybody out because then, someone might feel slighted or whatever. So he tends to not do that. So it was a strategy that they decided to pursue. Nothing wrong with it. And it is important. It is important to get the most you can out of him, to take a leap. It's his third year. This is going to be his first, hopefully, if he doesn't get in trouble, suspended, he'll have the full season, the full off season, the full season, healthy season.
Yeah, he got hurt last year.
18 weeks
in camp. He hurt his seat. I'm trying to remember. I think it was the same thing.
Yeah. And the gambling was the biggest thing, and he needs to, now he's got to have a clean slate, give himself the best chance. He's had 2 years under his belt, to understand how the league works and what's expected of him and, all that. And he's working on his technique. They need more out of him after that third year.
They do.
They
for sure.
You never know. And that's the thing that.
What does Campbell say? They all grow what they're saying. He's big on that. And he's right. Hey, not everybody comes in and progresses at the same rate.
Absolutely.
And he said that about whenever he's asked about Williams, he often says that, doesn't he?
Yes. And we've seen this so many times. There's just different people are different, they're just the players and not everybody has that, intuitive and instinctive professionalism. I would, if I were the Lions, I'd make him room with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I said, look, rent him out a room in your house.
That guy he's going to live with you. He came in at like 21 going on 50, didn't he?
Yeah. It was like, it should be like Step Brothers, like the John C. Reilly, Will Ferrell, you guys going to, what's your favorite color? Of course, they'd say the opposite all the time. They wouldn't be the same at all. But yeah, like stick to him, be on his hip. And that, I wrote that last year. He needed a mentor, needs somebody on his case, somebody to learn, here's the example.
Well, based on what he said last week, it's working a little bit. I mean, one of the other things that sneaky stuck with me was that he basically said he's talking with Goff a couple times a day. Like, hey, yeah, I didn't realize it's okay to talk to your quarterback. It's okay that he wants to pick your brain and talk, because he probably was on some level. He probably didn't want to be bothered with that. Say, hey, let me go run my routes, catch my balls in practice, whatever. I'm going to use my stuff. So that was another area where he was kind of stubborn. He's got to communicate better, and I think the Lions took a chance on him in the first round, despite the injury. And maybe they knew some of this other stuff, his immaturity and so forth. When we talk about Lions culture and the players they want all the time, because he loves football and he plays hard and he's not afraid of physicality, as slight as he is. He's not super slight, but he's a little slight, right? At 6'3". He likes to block you. He's got that football part, and that's harder to teach. You feel like we can help somebody grow up, teach them how to study the playbook, tell them why it's important, all that kind of stuff. But that fearlessness and that attitude on the field, he's always had that, and I think that's why they took the chance with it, along with the crazy speed and all that sort of stuff. Right?
He doesn't, and I think it was Khalif Raymond who mentioned something about how his energy is like contagious.
Absolutely.
And he has fun, and that's great. You need that. You need players like that on your team who maybe aren't the most professional and work dude and nose to the grindstone, but they have fun. They bring people together in a different way. That's important, but really what's important is you need to beat the dude down the line and, catch a 30-yard pass consistently when you're open, not be dropping things and not be bobbling, not, learn to not body cat, all these different line up in the right place.
That's a big one.
And yeah, and that's, and you know what, it's interesting because it's what you say about him talking to Goff is, that speaks to me about a little bit of an insecurity, and that if you're just not sure of yourself, you're a little intimidated to go to talk to your quarterback and like, hey, how do I do this? And I don't understand what are you looking for here? And they probably need more of that communication. And sometimes you see that with younger people is, you explain something to them and they just kind of nod and okay, I get it, but they really don't get it. They just don't want to seem dumb. And I still don't get it. Can you explain this again? Like, why? And I don't know that's the thing with Jim was I don't know if he pursues that, if he tries to make things clear for himself, because people learn different ways. And you just have to understand, am I a visual learner or learner? Do I need to go over this?
Sure.
And I would imagine that his position that, Antoine Randall is like definitely, he's played in the league, he's been a coach for a little while. He should understand like guys need to learn at different rates. And it's important for him to teach JMO the way that JMO needs to understand things. It should all be there for them. For him, they're really going out of their way, I'm sure, to make sure he's successful, I'm rooting for him. I like you said, what he said about being honest, about acknowledging that immaturity, the fun loving nature,
Yeah.
I hope he does do.
And
well.
you can see the way he plays. He's excited for his teammates when they make plays. I mean, he's
runs all the way down the sideline into the end zone. He starts slapping
he's a
guys.
very team-oriented guy. You can see that, right? I mean, he's not a selfish guy. He just was immature and stubborn and had some tough injury luck, and then the gambling, and it all sort of conspired to slow the progress. And plus, he had a big leap to make in terms of how to be a professional and maximize the natural gifts that he had, because they're considerable. They're considerable, and it gets the hands. And so we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what they can get out of him, and what he can get out of himself, more importantly, because that's where it starts. And listening to him last week, you feel like, hey, at least he's on the right track. We'll see where it leads. But in any case, all right, let's take one more quick break and come back and finish up with Carlos's favorite thing, which I'm sure is going to be the golf trip, or something to do with the golf trip, or maybe he didn't get as hungover as he thought he might be, and that's his favorite thing. Who knows? Maybe he had too many White Claws one night and they didn't pay for it. I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of miracle of science. But anyway, we'll be right back with more Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. Welcome back to Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean. It's that time of the show where Carlos tells us what made him happy this past week, and I look forward to that.
Well, Sean, this takes me back to my days of being a UCLA basketball fan in LA. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was in the Memorial Day weekend. I got to spend some time with a family in the Erie, PA area, home of your Erie Seawolves AA team.
Wait a second. Did you drive? You went to West Virginia. Did you just drive back north and meet your family?
I was in West Virginia 2 weeks ago, so I came back.
Oh, okay.
This last weekend. So I know you have a fuzzy idea about timelines and deadlines, Sean. I understand as a
no, I just thought maybe you were gone for a while, So
well, it's because the column about golf came out on Saturday or Sunday, so you thought I had just been there, but I'm not that fast of a writer, so I needed a few days to process. But anyway, so I was in Erie, had our family there, and some of my nephews and nieces live in the Pittsburgh area. And one of the funny things was they were talking to me about the Las Vegas Raiders, Allegiant Stadium. Like, hey, have you been there? We hear there's a pool at the stadium. And I'm like, I haven't been there, but I don't know. I haven't heard. Maybe there is. Makes sense. Maybe in Vegas. And they said, yeah, well, we might be going out there. I think the Steelers are playing there next year. And so we had this guy who lived in our subdivision, and he was a coach with the Steelers, and now he's playing for the Raiders. And so he said, I'll get you tickets if you guys want to come out. And his name was Gerald Alexander, and he's a really nice guy. And I was like, well, that sounds familiar. And I had forgotten. I was like, wait a minute. I'm like, he is a safety, right? And I'm like, yeah, he's a safety. And he played, I think, in the league for a while. Yeah, well, he was a Lions draft pick back in the day. When was it, Sean? You were a big Gerald Alexander fan. He was 2007, played for the Lions. And I remember he played at Boise State, I want to believe. Yes, Boise State. And the big thing with him is I remember covering him then. He had a tough injury in Minnesota one year. Adrian Peterson went right helmet to helmet with Adrian Peterson, and he had a spinal injury, and they actually held him back in Minnesota for examination. He was fine, but I remember covering him. He was a fun player. And we asked him when he got back from that injury, and he was okay. And we said, "What'd you think? What did that feel like?" He goes, "Well, sometimes you go against the Bronco and you get bucked." So he took it in good spirits, and I'm glad he's doing well. But it was funny that they had lived, they were neighbors with him for a couple of years, I suppose, and they really liked him, and they'd had no idea that I actually covered him for a little while in Detroit. So it's funny how these things come full circle sometimes, and maybe they get to go out there and jump into the pool in Las Vegas if there is one.
That's a great a story.
Great story.
That's a great
Anecdote.
story.
Yeah.
Anecdote. Great memory.
Narrative.
Great narrative.
I'm a storyteller, Sean.
Yeah, you are a storyteller, and this is all about narratives. All right, I'm going to be quick with mine. It's strange to say, hey, my favorite thing. It's about somebody who died, and that sounds a little incongruous. But when I found out that Bill Walton died the other day, I was doing a different podcast. Sorry, I'm not two-timing you. I think you know that up front. We're all open about that, so it's everything's out in the open, which is good. But the producer of that podcast, who's not necessarily a Celtics fan, UCLA fan, anything like that, NBA fan, but it popped up in his phone. He said, Bill Walton died. I said, oh, and so a couple of minutes passed, and then he said, God, why is this getting to me? I said, I know, I feel the same. There was something, there are some people in this life that, and stories I've read over the years about him, stories I've read since he died, testimonials I've heard, just how he was with people. People who were friends with him would talk about it. He'd come in and say, hey, how you doing? And actually want to listen and look right at you. And my father-in-law was like that, but and meant it and and wanted you to take as much time. I mean, how so few people actually really want to listen. I mean, because we're busy and we're like, how you doing? You don't want to hear, you want to say, I'm okay, I'm not okay, whatever, and you want to move on. But he was like that in every way. And the joy that he spread, the combination of playing for John Wooden and the structure and the tradition with just being an old school counterculture hippie in the best possible way, and that joy and that curiosity and the smiling. He was always smiling. Everything was possible. And that came through in his broadcasts. And they're not very many people like that combine different parts of our society into one interesting, just human package. And he was like that. And I think you would see that in the remembrances and the testimonials. And it just felt like you lost a little something when somebody's got that kind of spirit. Never mind the fact that he was an all-time great player and kind of got cut short a little bit by injuries, but just that spirit, it was special and it was different, and I just made me smile thinking about what he represented and just the uniqueness of him and how people like that and appreciate when folks go around like that, you know. So anyway, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, he was. I didn't get to spend a lot of time in LA around him, but I saw him at a couple of events, and that was always his reputation. And he was always smiling, say hi to people, really good with people. In fact, when I worked in LA for a smaller paper there, our beat writer, UCLA beat writer, I think he was an analyst for a little while for UCLA radio maybe, but he was kind of too talkative, because if you knew somebody and there was a time or two where he might be at the urinal and you're at the urinal and he'd start chatting you up. And as we know, with men, some people don't always want that conversation standing at the urinal. But Bill was always willing to talk to anybody, and you would never know, other than his massive height, you would never know that he'd been some star athlete, whatever. Not, the most humble person in the best of ways among star athletes. And imagine that, right? Playing for John Wooden and coming from those teams and being this icon and legendary player, but never acted anything like it.
Yeah, no. For sure. My youngest son, saw him in Portland a couple of years ago. He was out there for a college basketball tournament, and he walked by him. He said, "Hey, Bill, how's it going?" He said, "I thought, what the heck?" And he turned around and said, "Hey, man, it's going great. I'm in Portland." And he extended his arms out. He's like, "I'm doing great. How you doing, man?" And he didn't know my son, right? He said it was like one of the best random interactions he'd ever had like that. So he was just like that.
And full of life.
Yeah. Anyway. All right.
Gone too soon.
Yeah, absolutely. What do we need to do? We need to thank people and get out of here.
Yeah, let's thank our producer, Robin Chan, and our sports editor, executive producer, Kirkland Crawford. But most importantly, the people sign the paychecks. Nicole Irving Nichols, our editor of the Free Press. And Sean, your favorite person to thank every week is who?
The listeners, do we need to cut out with the thank yous? Hey, we're just doing our job. They're doing their job. Do we need to thank? We want to thank Robin. We're going to thank Robin, thank the listeners, and get the heck out. Can we just?
Yes, I like it.
Can we just do that? All right. Obviously,
Let's fire Kirk and
absolutely. So
they never listen anyway. It's fine.
No.
They don't even know we have this. They don't even know we're doing this podcast. Let's be real.
They don't. So, all right. Obviously, you can find us wherever you find your favorite podcast. Rate us when you get there. Spotify, Apple. Subscribe, please. We welcome your feedback, no matter what it is, especially Carlos. Until next week, my brother.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right. And we'll be back, I don't know, at some point to talk more lines on Free Press and other things, of course. Free Press Sports with Carlos and Sean.